On the morning of June 6, 1944, Staff Sergeant Carwood Lipton was part of a small group of roughly 13 men from the 2nd Battalion of the 506th Regiment moving along the road towards Saint-Marie-du-Mont. Their objective was to secure routes leading inland from Utah Beach, a vital task in the early hours of the Allied invasion of Normandy. After becoming scattered during the airborne drop, Lipton and his fellow paratroopers had gradually regrouped with a larger force made up of officers and men from the 2nd Battalion, including much of the battalion's staff. As they advanced, occasional exchanges of fire with German troops slowed their progress, but the column continued moving toward its destination. At one point, the advance halted. After several minutes, word filtered back through the line that Easy Company was needed at the front. When Lipton and the others moved forward, they met Lieutenant Richard Winters, who informed them that a German battery of 4 105mm artillery guns had been located in fields to the right of the road. The guns were actively shelling Utah Beach, where thousands of Allied troops were landing. The battery represented a serious threat to the invasion force, and it had to be eliminated immediately. Winters quickly organized a plan of attack. Given the urgency of the situation and the limited number of men available, he decided on a rapid frontal assault supported by carefully positioned covering fire. Lieutenant Winters established a base of fire using machine guns positioned as close to the German positions as possible. He assigned Lipton and another soldier, Mike Ranney, to move along a tree line that extended beyond the German gun positions. Their task was to establish a flanking position and direct fire into the enemy's side, while the rest of the force attacked head-on. As Lipton and Ranney worked their way along the tree line, they quickly discovered that thick brush and undergrowth prevented them from seeing the German positions. Meanwhile, the sounds of battle were growing louder. The frontal assault was clearly beginning, and Lipton knew that the attacking force would soon need support from the flank. Determined to contribute, he searched for a better vantage point. The trees in the area were not easy to climb. Rather than having large trunks that could provide both elevation and protection, they consisted of smaller trunks and branches. Lipton carefully climbed into the branches and balanced himself in an exposed position that allowed him to look directly down upon the German defenders. From this precarious perch, he had an extraordinary view of the battlefield. Spread out before him were approximately 15 German soldiers. Some occupied prepared defensive positions, while others lay prone in open ground, firing toward the advancing men of Easy Company. Although Lipton was fully exposed and visible from his position in the tree, the Germans were so focused on the attack developing in front of them that none noticed him. During the jump into Normandy, Lipton had lost his Thompson submachine gun when his leg bag became detached. To replace it, he had picked up a carbine, but he had not yet fully trusted its sights. Spotting a German soldier firing from a prone position, he took aim and fired. The soldier appeared to duck but otherwise remained motionless. Lipton fired again with the same result. Unsure whether the sights were properly aligned, he deliberately aimed at the dirt directly beneath the man's head and squeezed off another round. When dirt erupted exactly where he intended, he realized the weapon was accurate and that his previous shots had likely already struck the target. Confident in his weapon, Lipton began firing rapidly at the German positions. From his elevated position, he shifted targets as quickly as he could, sending round after round into the enemy ranks. Over the course of the engagement, he estimated firing 20 to 30 rounds. The effect was immediate. The Germans, now under pressure from both the frontal assault and Lipton's unexpected flanking fire, began to lose cohesion. As Easy Company closed in from the front, Lipton watched German soldiers retreat across the open field toward distant hedgerows and tree lines. He could see Lieutenant Buck Compton and Sergeant Bill Guarnier charging forward, firing their weapons and throwing grenades as they advanced. The assault was gaining momentum. Eventually, however, the withdrawing Germans spotted Lipton's position in the tree. Enemy riflemen and machine gunners quickly turned their attention toward him. Bullets tore through branches around him, snapping twigs and showering him with debris. Realizing he could not remain where he was, Lipton scrambled down the tree as fast as possible. Enemy fire followed him every step of the way. He later recalled being certain that he would be hit, yet somehow he reached the ground completely unharmed. After descending, Lipton moved back along the tree line to rejoin the machine gun positions. As he advanced toward the first artillery piece, he encountered a wounded soldier, Popeye Wynn, whose injuries required immediate attention. Lipton applied sulfur powder to the wound and secured a bandage before continuing toward the enemy gun positions. When he reached the first artillery piece, Lieutenant Winters was already there and eager to ensure the gun was permanently disabled. Lipton remembered that he had jumped into Normandy carrying a demolition kit in his musette bag, but he had left it near the road before the attack began. Realizing it was needed, he crawled back through increasingly heavy enemy fire to retrieve blocks of TNT and percussion caps. By this stage of the battle, moving upright had become impossible. German rifle and machine gun fire was intensifying as enemy forces attempted to respond to the assault. Lipton and several other soldiers crawled forward through weeds and low brush, relying on a slight depression in the ground for protection. There were few of the famous Norman hedgerows in this immediate area, leaving the men dangerously exposed. Among those crawling nearby was Warrant Officer Hill, a man Lipton knew well from their time together at Fort Bragg. As the enemy fire increased, another officer ahead of Lipton asked where battalion headquarters was located. Lipton glanced back toward Hill, who began to answer. As Hill raised his head only a few inches above the ground, a bullet struck him squarely in the forehead. He was killed instantly. Lipton believed the shot was pure chance rather than deliberate marksmanship. Hill had barely exposed himself, and there had been no time for a sniper to deliberately aim. Nevertheless, the incident served as a grim reminder of the danger they faced. From that moment on, every man hugged the ground even more closely, and their advance slowed considerably. Eventually, Lipton reached the artillery positions once more. To his surprise, one of the guns had already been destroyed. The breech had been blown apart and peeled open like a banana. Curious about how this had been accomplished, he asked Winters for an explanation. Winters told him that he had dropped blocks of TNT down the barrel of the gun. When Lipton asked how the explosives had been detonated, Winters explained that Bill Guarnere had dropped a captured German stick grenade down the barrel after the TNT. The resulting explosion had completely wrecked the weapon. Although impressed by the ingenuity of the method, Lipton admitted he was somewhat disappointed that he had not personally disabled the gun using the demolition equipment he had retrieved. By then, however, the mission had already succeeded. German resistance continued to increase, and signs of a counterattack were becoming apparent. Since the artillery battery had been neutralized, there was no reason to remain exposed in the position. Winters ordered the men to withdraw closer to the road. Allied tanks were beginning to arrive in support, and with their assistance, the area was soon secured permanently. Before moving on to continue their D-Day objectives, Lipton and Winters walked back through the battlefield. Along the way, they passed the body of Warrant Officer Hill. When Winters asked who the fallen soldier was, Lipton explained what had happened. Winters then removed Hill's carbine so that it could be given to another paratrooper who lacked a weapon. The men eventually regrouped with the rest of the battalion and resumed their advance inland. Reflecting on the battle years later, Lipton noted several details that differed from other accounts. He never saw the dead horses and wagons that some witnesses later described near Brecourt Manor. He also did not recall seeing the manor house itself or any French civilians in the area. However, he did remember standing near a large barn with either Winters or Guarnere and observing two German soldiers inside who had recently been killed, apparently by fire from a Thompson submachine gun. The destruction of the artillery battery proved enormously significant. The German guns had posed a serious threat to the success of the Utah beach landings. Had they remained operational, they could have inflicted devastating casualties on the troops coming ashore. Their elimination removed one of the most dangerous obstacles facing the invasion force. The assault itself became a classic example of leadership, initiative, and aggressive action, overcoming superior numbers. A small group of determined paratroopers, led by Lieutenant Winters, successfully attacked and routed a larger enemy force occupying prepared defensive positions. Their success resulted from bold leadership, rapid movement, high morale, and the ability to attack from multiple directions simultaneously. The Germans were likely convinced they were facing a much larger force than the handful of paratroopers actually involved. For his actions during the assault on the Brecourt Manor battery, Staff Sergeant Carwood Lipton was awarded the Bronze Star. His citation praised his courage, devotion to duty, and willingness to expose himself to intense enemy rifle, sniper, and machine gun fire in support of the attack. His conduct reflected the highest traditions of military service and demonstrated the extraordinary bravery displayed by the men of Easy Company on D-Day.